Welcome to Discover Energy Work, and I'm Richard Wicks. I always say "and" I'm Richard Wicks. I am Richard Wicks without an "and." And today I have Amanda Yik, and Amanda Yik is a Shinrinyoku therapist, and I actually can read Chinese and Japanese. I think it's pretty much the same thing, but I'm going to let Amanda explain what a Shinrin-yoku therapist is. But it's something really special, and you're going to learn loads in this next episode, about 40 minutes of information and amazing experiences and a great story. Good morning, Amanda. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, Richard. Thanks for having me.
That's great. I've got to say, I'm starting to feel really relaxed just with your lovely presence with me today. So thank you for that. You've got this story and which has taken you to where you are of doing Shinrin Yoku. What is Shinrin Yoku for people? I mean, how would you introduce yourself? Would you say, I'm Amanda Yik, a Shinrin-yoku therapist, or do you have another way?
So there's a few things I can talk about regarding Shinrin-yoku. So first of all, Shinrin-yoku is the way the Japanese is pronounced. It's in English it would be forest bathing. So it's funny how in English a lot of times, when people see the word forest bathing, the first question they ask is, do I need to bring swimsuits? And it's a question that I actually seldom get asked when I'm hosting it in Cantonese, because typically I think what people imagine when they think about bathing is literally going into water. But what in this case forest bathing means is basically immersing ourselves in the atmosphere of the forest. So another way of calling forest bathing is forest therapy. Some people don't like the word therapy because they feel like you need to be, something needs to be wrong with you for you to need therapy. But it's actually, it speaks to the therapeutic effects of being in nature, of spending time in nature in a way that is healing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I can draw a parallel between you, Shoshana Weinberg, and so many people who, yeah, I mean, the names are just not coming to my head, but so many people who have been on the show and said, like, I've got this connection with nature. I nurtured my connection with nature. I learned so much from nature, and I just used to love hanging out in the woods, in the forest, on the hillsides, and this idea of immersion, in the way that we lose ourselves, we become one with, when we immerse ourselves in the water, we're like one with the water. It's a beautiful picture. But now your background is quite different, isn't it? Like where you came from. I mean, I'm sorry I'm leading you there, but I'm fascinated in the, what I'm fascinated really in is these journeys that people have made where they're like turning points in their life, and they went, it's like I'm shifting into another layer of life, consciousness, existence. Are you okay to share anything about that?
Sure. It's a little bit of a windy path. So in terms of career, like I'm not starting from when I was born.
No, yeah, we've only got 40 minutes. So,
so I started off as a commercial litigator working in a law firm in Hong Kong. I was educated in the law school, obviously, and then I started training, and so I couldn't be more far off than, being in the forest. Actually, I was killing a lot of trees because of all the papers that we were using in litigations, like folders after folders of documents and evidence. So I was living a very sedentary life. Like I was spending a lot of time in the offices, and that lasted 9 years. 9 years after I graduated. So it's funny looking back, because I think even during the first 2 years when I was still in training, I had a feeling that, I can't be doing this for the rest of my life. Like,
Mm.
there's something about it that just doesn't feel right. But then I have absolutely no idea what else I can do. That's the only thing I know how to do. And funny enough, I was actually quite okay with it. Like, I got good grades in law school.
Mm.
Pretty impressive. Like, I've only lost one case in all the cases I've handled. So, like, I was okay with it. But, so the push factor in terms of, leaving law wasn't very strong. Like, I had really good colleagues and bosses as well. But it's the pull factor. It's, there's something out there that's calling me, that ultimately, is what caused me to leave
Isn't it
law.
fascinating? You using the word calling, because vocation comes from voca in Latin, to call. What we're called to do. It's as if it's coming from the outside rather than the inside, or maybe a call from the inside.
I think it's a call from the inside that's kind of manifested, or I don't know if that's the right word, but it's definitely a call from the inside, but it's triggered, or it's brought to me through something on the outside. And for me, that's nature. It's coming through the hills and the seas and the beauty that I saw, and then something just triggered me. It's like someone hitting me with a rod on my head, like, what are you doing? Look at this. This is so beautiful.
Was there
And
a
then all
moment
of a
where
sudden,
that happened?
yeah.
Were you like sitting in the office and like there was a physical hit, or?
I remember that moment very clearly. It was, and I actually wrote a post about it on Facebook not long ago. It was, I think it was in 2006, while I was still a lawyer. But then I was spending weekends away from the office, like literally escaping the office. So I would be spending weekends in countrysides, hiking, paddling, surfing, whatever, like anything that takes me out of the office. But there's this one day where I was in Sai Kung, which is a beautiful part of Hong Kong in the countryside. And I was just riding on a speedboat, traveling from one beach back to the pier. And then it was kind of a normal sunny summer day. It was beautiful, blue skies, it was hot, everything just glittered and felt so alive with colors and everything. But still, it wasn't out of the ordinary. Like, all my friends were, just chatting away, and no one was paying attention to what's around us. But then all of a sudden, I felt like, wait a second, there is something about this that is so magical. Like, look at these hills, look at this water. And then it was that moment when I felt like I was hit in the head. And then
why do you use the expression hit on the head? Did you feel,
I don't know,
like it was like from here, like an impact? I mean, I'm just curious because, like, my work's all body, and
I think energetically it felt like something from higher up. So that's why I had that feeling of being hit in the head. It's something from higher up. I think it hit me kind of in the heart, but then because it felt like it was coming from above. So it felt quite spiritual in that moment. It's almost like, if you, like, language doesn't do it justice, but if I use the word God, it feels like God saying something to me.
Right. Were you disoriented in the moment? Or do you remember what you exactly felt in that moment? Did you like fall to the ground? I mean, if I bashed you on the head, I think you probably, or somebody bashed me on the head, I'll probably fall over.
So, from the outside, it doesn't look like anything. Like, it looked like nothing is happening.
Yeah.
I was kind of just looking around, and I was looking at my friends and wondering if they saw something different as well. Like, I was like, hey, there is something different. But then I look at my friends, and then they're not seeing anything. Like, they're just chatting away as usual. So I was like, what's going on here? Something's happening. But I wasn't like, no, nothing. I just continued on with that ride on the speedboat. And that's
So
it. But
it
that
was like for you, something had happened. You knew, but you didn't know. Yeah, which is that's kind of a good thing. Yeah. And was it then the beginning of a series of events?
Mm, mm. So that's kind of like I heard the call. That's the moment when I felt like I heard the
Mm,
call, and
mm,
then my lawyer life I think continued on for a few more years. But then I started to look at possibilities of changing
mm,
the area of focus. So I thought perhaps I could explore, maybe I really wanted to do something about the environment because that's what the calling was about. It's like you need
mm,
to do something about
mm,
this beauty,
mm.
how are you going to tell people about this amazing beauty of nature? And I was like, oh my god, I'm a lawyer, I sit at my desk and I help people sue each other. What on earth can I do? So I thought maybe I can look into environmental law. So I changed to a different law firm, and then it didn't work out because environmental law is pretty much non-existent in Hong Kong, where I'm from.
Right.
It's very archaic. Um, so I enrolled in a part-time master's at the University of Hong Kong and after completing that master's, I moved into an NGO that basically promotes corporate social responsibility. So that's what I did.
We
As
lost
kind
you.
of
What was the master's about?
oh,
Because we lost you with
okay.
the internet.
All right. It's a master's on business sustainability.
Okay.
So,
Good.
and corporate responsibility.
Oh, cool.
So I thought maybe maybe I can combine my commercial skills with
Mm,
corporate responsibility. So working with companies to hopefully steer them towards environmental stewardship.
right.
So that's kind of, I think, another big turning point for me. So I left law after finishing that master's degree and joined an NGO that
Mm,
promotes corporate responsibility.
mm.
Mm.
And then, so when I mean, now you went from there. Was that the end of the story? Did you like?
That's not the, yeah, that's why I said
Yeah,
it's quite windy, I
yeah.
guess. There are
Well,
so
you know
many
what
little
Joseph
turns.
Campbell says about this. So I'm fascinated by Joseph Campbell. Talks about King Arthur and his round table, and all the knights had to go on a quest,
Mm,
and they would have to go into the forest, but they couldn't go into the forest where there was a path, because that's
mm,
not an adventure.
mm,
Yeah, you
mm,
have to make your own path. That's really, really challenging. And of course, it's all it's saying is there's a path where you choose to make a path, essentially,
mm,
which is
mm.
beautiful.
I think when you said it's challenging to go on a path where there's no path, I think it's equally challenging to not endeavor, um, to not attempt to do that because it's challenge. That's what I've done while I was in law firm. I refrained from taking that leap of faith. So it was challenging in a different way. It was challenging because my life was getting so dull. Like I was seriously bored at
Mm,
work. Like I was
mm,
getting all the financial rewards and the usual kind of prestige that gets attached to being a lawyer, but then I
yeah.
was like rotting inside. So
Mm,
it's another kind of challenge.
mm,
Um, and then I joined the NGO. So going back to the story, and then I
mm,
joined the NGO. I worked there for about more than 3 years before I got diagnosed with cancer. So it came as a really big shock
yeah.
because I thought I was very fit. I was exercising a lot. I was running, and I was doing trail walkers,
Mm,
walking, 100 kms, and I was doing a lot of things that I thought only a very healthy person can do. So I had no doubt about my own state of physical well-being.
mm, mm,
And then all of a sudden I got hit with this diagnosis. So I was kind of thrown into a completely different world,
Mm.
into the world of a sick person, of a patient, of someone who needs help, someone who's going to clinics every week for treatment. The body kind of disintegrating in many different ways. I had to, because my cancer was actually quite serious. I was, the time when I discovered it, it has already spread to my lymph nodes. So I had to go through like surgery, chemo, target therapy. The whole thing lasted for about 2 years.
Yeah, and that's just the mechanical part, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like that's like
Oh yeah. Yeah.
there's a whole Kubler-Ross process of dealing with
Mm.
even where our own mortality, these stages of grief or the stages of sickness.
Mm.
It's very, very challenging.
Yeah, and funny you mentioned Kubler-Ross because there's this guy, David Kessler, I think. He wrote, because Kubler-Ross was all about the 5 stages of grief, and then David Kessler came in with the 6th stage of grief, which is meaning, making meaning out of that experience. And
Nice.
I think I'm the kind of person who actually very quickly jumped to the 6th stage, like.
Okay.
And very quickly started to make meaning out of that experience of having cancer. That's not to say I haven't gone through the 5 stages. I think on one level, I'm trying to make meaning of that experience. But on many other levels, I'm going through all those stages of denial, anger, frustration, and then finally coming to acceptance. It takes a long time.
I think, I think they describe them as being like not linear, that they just jump and change anyway. So like the first thing is you might go into denial, but you also might be angry or you might just be depressed. I mean, it's just like, that's my own experience of grief. And I think, that for me, meaning was very, very important. So I can totally relate.
And sometimes all at the same time, angry and, depressed, depleted, and still trying to make meaning. I think we are complex beings.
Yeah.
Capable. One aspect of it is stronger. And I think there is a way our spirit helps us kind of hold on to life. I do believe the earth is a life-sustaining system at its core, and that all of us are kind of given ways to so that we are able to sustain our life for as long as possible. And for me, that was my tendency to look for meaning, and that was called upon kind of into my survival mechanism very early on. And I think that's also partly what led me to what I'm doing now in forest therapy. I've always liked nature. Like when I talked about how I was running marathons and hiking all weekends, it's because I really like being in nature as a healthy person. And then also when I was sick. So I kind of insisted on going out for walks every day, even though it just means the park across the road. I just have to go. I sometimes just sit. I sometimes just go to the dog park and look at dogs playing with each other. And that would often be the best time of my day during the toughest time of treatment. That in itself kind of kept me going without the need to look into what that means. The simple fact of spending time outdoors, looking at the sky, being with the trees is in itself, precious and enough in that sense.
I think it requires a lot of letting go to be so satisfied with the simplicity. You know what I mean? I think that it says enormous amount about you, Amanda.
I think there are
to
times
stop,
when when we're
you
being forced to let go.
you don't need to have the newest mobile phone or the latest Gucci handbag, or I mean, I'm trying to think of so many things, the latest Tesla or whatever it is. It's like there's the most beautiful part in the day is being in some nature and appreciating some part of the great wholeness. And that's I mean, it's super to hear, and it's inspiring. I think even that's an inspiring part of your story. And if
Thank
that, I
you.
mean, and is that what you share with people, or do you? Is that what? I mean, typically me. I think today's interview is me jumping ahead. So, is that your
Shinrinyoku.
Shinrinyoku?
Yeah, I mean, one thing about being sick is the humility that
Yeah,
it
yeah.
it kind of imposes humility on you, because
Mm,
you suddenly realize there's so much that's out of your control.
mm.
And I think that's something that I really saw in nature, because in nature, I don't think anything in nature tries to control. They just flow with the force of life.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose do you feel it's an
This grows where the light is.
Mm.
Oh, sorry, was there
Yeah, we
disconnection?
lost the network a bit. So nature, I always feel like nature is a wonderful, almost, it's a perfect system of checks and balances in a way. Once something grows too big, then it's going to fall over, and
Yeah.
it's and humility. You see, for me, it's also about it's a power paradox. Like once you get too big for your boots, then somebody's
Mm,
going to knock you down. But
mm,
whilst you're there, you think, well, we all feel invulnerable, when
mm,
and that goes with the. I always keep on referring to Dr. Keltner, Professor Dr. Keltner of California University, I think it is. Wrote a book called The Power Paradox, and he said, monkeys, they're totally about control. The chimps, they're brutal about
mm,
control. And
mm,
if you're an alpha chimp, you think you're the biggest, and you can have sex with whichever chimp you fancy, and you can
mm,
beat up all the other chimps and behave how
mm,
you like. Yeah,
mm,
but other chimps are going up the hierarchy, about to chop you. And I
yeah.
mean, life in a way it's a wonderful, there's a wonderful cyclic nature to it. And if we can sit there like I feel you do, and you sitting there in the appreciation of the wholeness, then I guess you kind of are stepping a little bit out of the rat race of it.
Yeah. And I'm still kind of chewing on what you were sharing about control. I think what's fascinating for me about human beings, and I'm separating human beings from all the beings of nature now.
Mm.
What's different for us is that I think we assume that we can control. And when I look at animals or chimps or species that have like alpha figures, um, I feel like, yeah, there are moments when they're in control, but ultimately they are in complete surrender to the higher laws of nature. They're in the attempts to stay alive forever. It's probably only present in human beings. And I think that struggle between, and there are moments when I feel like human beings are almost trying to be God. And those are moments when we become really, really vulnerable, actually.
I mean, there's so much to say to that. One of my favorite words is kenosis. I don't know if you know it. It means surrender to the divine, surrender to God,
Mm,
which is symbolized by a cross, actually. And of course, that's, for my understanding, that's actually what the cross represents, more than any crucifixion in a Christian way. and that we become God when we surrender to God. We become one with God. So it's the paradox of trying to control everything to become God, and actually it's a different. It's actually a little bit different, but it's paradoxical. Typically, it's like a lot of things. Yeah, I mean, I also feel like I'm always coming back to this thing of we're veiled beings, so that we think we're powerful, we think we're in control, and then there's a deeper part of us that's going, yeah, you think, yeah, that is not the case. Yeah, you wait. It's like, there's this the joke that says, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Yeah.
Oh gosh, yes,
Because
absolutely.
it's like this hilarious thing of hubris that we have of thinking we're in control, or thinking that we have the answer, and whether that's a religion or whatever. In a way, if you think you've got the answer, you're already stepped out of the whole the answer question oneness. Oh, that was good.
Oh, sorry, I lost you for a second. What you shared just now reminded me of there is this little episode in my very windy path where I haven't started doing forest therapy work yet back then. And I was faced with, I have left the law already. I have recovered from cancer. And I was faced with
yeah, you look great.
opportunity.
I've got to say, you look great.
Thank you. But yeah, there was this moment when I had this opportunity to take on a job, an office-based job, a job that would actually blend in a lot of the skills that I have accumulated from being a lawyer and working in the NGO. And then I just couldn't decide. I felt like my world is falling apart. Like I felt like I was at this crossroads. Do I take this job or not? And there were many moments when I felt like this job was perfect for me. I take all the boxes. And then I spent many hours just turning it over in myself, and I couldn't decide. And then in the end, I went to the church. I'm Catholic from birth, so in moments of intense kind of distress, I run to the church. So that's what I did. And then I just prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. And you know what? I heard a line, in my head. And I assumed that's God talking to me. And what he said, so I asked him, so what should I do? What should I do? Tell me what I should do, and I'll just follow whatever you tell me. And then the line I heard was, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
And I was really I was frustrated to begin with. Like, I'm coming to you for direction, and all you're saying is you can do whatever you want. It's not helping. But in the end, I really appreciated it because it needs to be my own decision. In order for me to...
It reminds me of Washan's story, who had this idea that was coming from the ego. And he asked his mentor, who's a Buddhist monk, and he said, no, that'll kill you. He let go of it and came back where the idea wasn't from the ego, and he said, yeah, that'll be very successful. It was kind of the same idea, my understanding. But once you let go, and you know what I mean, there's a subtle difference of letting go and letting God, and then suddenly it's, yeah, whatever, it's fine, as long as it's not out of this fear-based ego. The intention's wrong, like your whole energy behind it is off. And that's what it sounds like to me, in a way.
Yeah, and you're right. It's all about the intention. In saying it doesn't really matter what you do, that's true because it's all about what intentions you're holding as you're doing what you do. So I can be doing something that's totally not related to nature. But if I go in with the intention of, say, that I'm going to be of service to nature, I'm going to help people, and I'm going to enjoy every moment of this because I know this is good for the earth, or, whatever it is, intention that I'm holding. That's what matters. So, I mean, in the end, I didn't take on that job because, I mean, it would be a really stressful job and I don't want to stress my body anymore. So I took that even more windy path to become a forest therapy guide. And I think there's something about working with nature that is hugely humble to begin with, because there's so much out of control, but also the need to take a step back, the need to just let things unfold without my intervention, and to allow that to happen. That's a core part of forest therapy and being a guide. We hold space for what needs to happen. We don't know what needs to happen. It's a process that we witness. It's not a process that we engineer. So it's that whole experience of going through illness, I think, really helped me in that step back. And it's a beautiful thing to do, I think, especially now in these times, because there's so much that we need to witness and hold space for. And so many people are finding that difficult. I think it's much easier in nature.
It's a beautiful takeaway for me. Thank you so much. That's really nice. Yeah. So I suppose what I'm kind of thinking along the lines of is, if I came to you and I said, I came to you with my bathrobe and my towel. So I want to do some forest showers. Of course, you'd say you don't need your bathrobe and towel. Yeah. But so how do you, joking apart, how does somebody enter, and do you have any anecdotes of things that have happened that can, because stories connect people for, in a funny way.
Well, there are many stories. I mean, forest therapy, in the way that I'm trained, I mean, there are different ways of taking people into nature, but the way I'm trained, we focus a lot on relationships. So it's basically a practice, or, we go in with the intention of rebuilding our relationship with nature, with the earth. So there's a lot of interaction between the people who are there, with me on this journey, and also between the people and the beings of nature. So a funny story is, so there was a time when we call one thing, there's this one, you can call it exercise, or we call it invitation. There's one invitation that we offered, and we used to call it conversation with the tree. So basically, after some, priming and warming up, when we feel like people are kind of in the zone of they're able to leave their kind of busy life behind, and they're in a more relaxed state. In meditation, I think people would call it like an altered state of consciousness. We don't call it that in forest therapy. It's just a more relaxed state. A state of maybe in a liminal zone, liminality. And then we invite them to go find a tree and, have a conversation with the tree and see what you discover. And then I've had quite a few people, come back to me and say, hey, I sat with this tree, I told the tree, a lot of stuff, and then I didn't hear a response. And I was like, oh gosh. Oh no, the tree is not going to talk to you like human beings do. Like, it's not going to open its mouth and utter words.
Right.
And I think that for me, like, that happened at the beginning of my practicum, of my training to become a guide. And I realized that we are so engrossed in our own human world.
Yeah.
that, you know, some of us can even assume that trees can talk to us just like human beings. And I was like, whoa, I've never thought that was possible. I've never imagined that. But I mean, it says a lot about how far we have come, you know, or how far we have removed ourselves from nature. And then over time, you know, we the tree anymore. We focus more on having, or that intention, that time of being with a tree, you know, as simple as that. Being with the tree, um, and maybe even seeing the tree as a friend or someone you love, and you know, and just do whatever your body feels like doing. If you feel like sitting down, or you know, leaning on the tree, or just looking at it from afar, but holding that intention of connecting with the tree in a way that speaks to your heart. So then then the whole, you know, the whole feedback from participants changed. You know, no one came back to say, you know, the tree didn't speak back to me, I didn't hear anything. But it's a much more embodied way of knowing that the trees and, you know, other beings of nature are there for us and with us, and that the trees have been witnessing us. The trees have been providing and sustaining life. You know, those kind of layers started to emerge, and you know, all sorts of kind of wisdom coming from trees, like trees shedding leaves, you know, reminding us that we need to shed our old baggage, and you know, we need to let go of old stuff. In order for new leaves to grow. So there's a lot of those kind of wisdom coming out from spending time consciously in nature.
Yeah. And do you do like, so people can phone you up and say, take me to the woods? Can they just say, get me out of here? I need some nature. And I need somebody to help induct me into connecting because I'm so disconnected.
There are times like that, but it's not so common that, you know, for someone to be aware of the fact that they are disconnected with nature takes a lot of awareness already. Like a lot of times we aren't even aware of that. So what I've been doing, and things have evolved over time. So I've been putting out kind of open to public events where people just sign up, and a lot of times people are just curious. You know, they want to see what this is, you know, the Shinrinyoku thing. You know, what is all that fuss about? But I also am starting to have more and more people writing to me and say, hey, we have, you know, there are a few of us and we really want to see if we can experience it together, or we want to learn more about it. There are people who are wanting to go deeper into really immersing themselves more. So going deeper in the sense that they are not just interested in trying it out or trying, you know, being in nature in an intentional, conscious way, but also to go inside, to go within and see what's in there, that's being reflected to them by nature. So it's become much more of an opportunity for deeper opening and healing. And I'm starting now, because of these kind of new ways of that people have started to see this in a different way, that I'm starting to do more coaching or include coaching elements into these forest therapy experiences.
Right. So sort of could go into nature with a problem, with a goal, and look for nature to kind of give you the answers. Is that?
Yeah, a little bit like that. I mean, sometimes it's not very specific. They don't necessarily have like one big question in life that they want sorted. It could just be that, you know, life has been stressful. Life has been very difficult and challenging, and you know, and they feel like, you know, something's not sitting right. You know, something's just, you know, something's just not right, and they're not able to name it. But you know, perhaps going into nature would help. You know, and that already opens the door. So with this pandemic, I think there's just been, even more need for people to go into nature. Um, and the situation is challenging because a lot of times, in the US, there's shelter in place. In Hong Kong, there's this new law against, group outings now, again, just starting tomorrow. So it's really challenging. But the need is there, and it's actually increasing, and people are becoming more aware of it. So in whatever ways, whether they come and sign up for an event, or they write to me, or if they just go out on their own,
do you have a guide? I mean, if I said, oh, right, I'm in Thailand, how do I just take a walk in nature? I mean, it sounds stupid. I know how to take a walk in nature, but it's like wine. You can drink a glass of wine and somebody says, okay, well, let me introduce you to wine. There's a whole other layer of nuance that you won't believe, and it's wonderful. Is there resources that people, I mean, your website's wonderful, so I can refer people to your website, but is there anything else where you can?
I mean, it's the kind of thing that sounds so simple that sometimes we just brush it off and think that, oh, I take a walk in the woods, or I go hiking, and that's it. That's forest bathing. But it's actually much more nuanced and intentional than that. So there are some very simple tips that I've kind of put into a leaflet, and these are really simple things, like leave your phones behind. Maintain silence, give each other space, and tuning into your senses, your body, and really noticing nature around us, which is, as simple as it sounds, it's not something that we do every time we go into nature.
One thing I love about Japanese culture is the ability to make things simple. Like sushi is, rice on top of fish, but the way they do it, like it's something else. And there's one sushi and another sushi is totally different. So, I mean, it's beautiful. I think even that advice is wonderful. So, and I feel that advice kind of covers so many things as well. Yeah. So thank you, Amanda. That's beautiful. I think everybody would certainly check out what you're doing on your website, and if they're interested, I'll refer them to you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Richard.